Hi, my name is Piper, and kind of like Lanchi, I'm going to be talking about school, but in a slightly different way. When I was in 5th grade, I loved the creative and hands-on approach that school had. I would dissect owl pellets and go on long walks to collect leaves, and I had the opportunity to ask questions like, why were they a different color in the fall than they were in summer? Why is the sky blue? Deep level thinking. But the point is, I would wake up every day with a great sense of excitement to go to school. There was never dread, there was never pressure. However, by 6th grade, just a year later, I was 11 years old and having panic attacks every night because of exams, assessments, and new assignments were a new responsibility and reality in my life. The sense of excitement that I had towards going to school was now replaced with a big pit of nausea and anxiety every morning. I was told countless times that this stress would pass. I simply had to get used to studying and manage my time better. But it never did. And these panic attacks continued because I had taught myself and put pressure upon myself and defined grades as things that made up my characteristics. And the grade that I received in red at the top of my paper was what defined me as a person and my worth. I remember being so clearly upset one time. I had a test in 6th grade in math. And anyone who knows me well knows that math isn't necessarily my thing. I have severe dyscalculia and ADHD, so trying to do math is just not necessarily my strong suit, to say the least. But despite that, I had worked hours and hours on end the weekend before this test. I felt confident and I felt okay. But the second I sat down in that test and read that first question, even though I would have known how to do it, the amount of pressure that was put on performing well in this test made me freeze up. Once again, I had a panic attack so bad that I fainted and had to go to the nurse. I got a 2 on that test. Even though I had spent hours studying and knew the information and the material like the back of my own hand. And I remember thinking in the nurse's office, after a few cups of juice, I remember thinking, tests don't test your ability to know a subject. You know it's flawed if things like learning disabilities, mental health, even lack of sleep the night before can affect one's performance. And why do we go to such lengths to make sure that children basically are able to sit at a desk for 8 hours, but their own mental health is not prioritized? 5 years later, and that pressure is still all-encompassing. I'll work hard and I'll study the information, but anything I have retained will leave the day after I take the test, as I'll be so focused on my next upcoming assignment and exam. So what differentiated my 10-year-old self and my now 16-year-old self? Well, it was my interest in learning without the pressure and the expectations of doing well that clouded it. A good example is my love for English. From the ages of 5 to 10, I was dead set on being a journalist or an author, and you could rarely find me without a book in my hand. And I wanted to pursue this passion to no ends. But after entering the upper school, because it was my strength, I put more pressure on myself to do well, because I saw it as, if this is my passion, it will determine who I am, and I therefore have to do well as pressure from friends and teachers and society. But it got to the point that my passion had now turned into something that was anxiety perpetuating and provoking. I turned my passion into something that created so much stress and so much nausea that I no longer want to be a journalist or an author. And if I had to boil it down, it's because of the school system. It's because of the pressure that's put on the numbers that are written in red on the top of everyone's paper. I would have loved to pursue writing. Had you told 5-year-old Piper that I wouldn't have pursued it because of the academic system? I mean, you can hear how messed up that sounds. This being said, one does need to obtain some kind of marker understanding of how well they know a subject. But do we really need tests and exams? The Institution for Learning in the US states that brain research suggests that too much stress is psychologically and physically harmful. And when stress becomes overwhelming, the brain shifts into a fight or flight response, where it's impossible to engage in the higher order thinking processes that are necessary to respond correctly to standardized test questions. Furthermore, when one thinks of the preparation that we need for life after school, we're not going to be sat a meter apart in desks in artificial lighting, not able to engage or collaborate or problem solve with our peers. With tests, we're forced and encouraged to regurgitate the information that, quite frankly, many of us, IB students will know, will probably have crammed into their head at 12 o'clock the night before with a can of Red Bull next to them. That's not learning. That's memorizing facts, but how are you growing from that? The test experience in itself proves it. If you're not able to collaborate and bounce ideas off of other people, how are you expected us to go into university, into jobs, and efficiently be able to work with people when sitting down and regurgitating information that we've memorized is all that we know? Suicide is the third leading cause for adolescents. Two professors named Hansen and Lang had a study, and they, and I quote, found that the rates of suicide increased during the school year, but dramatically decreased during the summer vacations and holidays. The results were consistent over multiple years. For example, the suicide rate tripled for 15 to 19-year-olds between 1959 and 1990. Many organizations, such as the American Institute for Learning, but also mental health organizations, have recognized that our school system, primarily for upper school education, is outdated and is harming our students more than it's helping them. So what can we do? With COVID came many challenges, to say the least. I think that would be the understatement of the year. However, it also provided opportunities and open doors, particularly for learning opportunities. With COVID and people not being able to sit down and physically take tests, projects and initiatives that were student-led were introduced. With these projects, students could find a topic within the subject at hand and delve deep into it. And Hansen and Lang, the same two professors, found that both the motivation as well as the grades were increased. Another example is in the IB. We have what are called IAs, or internal assessments, where essentially the only guidelines we have are the word count and the page limit. Other than that, for the most part, we're able to delve into any topic into our subject at hand, so long as it abides with our syllabus. But that being said, it allows so much more motivation if someone's genuinely interested. Going back to math, 5 years later, one will have thought that perhaps my relationship with math would have been better, but still no. And I find my math IA particularly comical because, once again, anyone who knows me knows that's not my favorite thing in the world, but I was so genuinely interested in my math IA that I took my vacation time during the break, voluntarily, to work on it. And if that doesn't say anything about project-based learning, I don't know what does, because the fact that I'm someone who loves film, and the fact that I didn't spend my time sitting and watching a movie, but I chose to go and work on my math IA because I was so genuinely interested, says everything I need to say. I found that I was researching things and investigating things and genuinely absorbing them, not just memorizing them. I was taking them and trying to apply them to other things as well. This exemplifies how creative learning is so much more efficient, both for the learning that is a result of it, but the general well-being of students. I'm just one of millions of examples, but if I was motivated to do math, then imagine what we could do with our passions. Students can feed into their passions while still learning and growing with projects, and it's student initiative-led projects. For my math IA, I explored feminism in South American countries. For my history IA, I explored socialism in Cuba. And for film, the representation of non-heteronormative characters in media. The fact that I'm someone that likes politics and human rights and is very passionate about it, the fact that I could use these subjects, which, historically speaking, weren't my strong suit or not my favorite, and turn them into ones that I would work on in my free time, said everything. A study conducted by the American Psychological Association found that the average high schooler has the same level of anxiety as a high-risk psychiatric patient in the 1960s. I'd just like to let that sink in for a second. And for what? Suicide, anxiety, depression, and so many other mental illnesses have scientifically been proven to be so heavily correlated with our school system. So if you truly care about your students, if you truly care about your children, as educators, you will change. Tests aren't helping, but they're harming your students. They're not providing the right results. It's killing your passion and your creativity. And it's not going to create a generation that's going to be collaborative future leaders. So why do we do it? Please change for the better. Thank you.